All right, welcome, college baseball fans, to a special episode. I'm joined by Bethany Bradsher, author of Never Take This for Granted. It's a book about East Carolina baseball atmosphere. Uh, uh, Bethany, can you tell us a little bit about what this book is about and
Sure,
just briefly?
absolutely. I'm happy to. So this really is a book of the culture surrounding ECU baseball, and that includes the fans and a lot of the people that are the stalwarts, the people that make Clark LeClaire Stadium one of the places that opposing teams least like to come play. It can be very loud and very excited, and the cheers that especially that come from the jungle, which is the outfield section, are pretty legendary. So I live here in Greenville, North Carolina. Wrote an East Carolina baseball book years ago, but have been a fan myself for many years and felt like it was something that's so unique that it needed to be captured. So it's not just fan stories, although there are more of those than anything. I also tried to capture the big baseball moments from the past, for in this century, for the past 23 years from the program.
And this book is going to be released on Friday, April 19th, and you can pre-order it at ecubaseballbook.com. And if you pre-order by Thursday at midnight,
you are eligible to win a prize package, including a signed Pirate baseball jersey. It's powder purple, which you have to read the book to learn about what that is. Very exciting and controversial jersey. And Carter Cunningham has signed that jersey. He's one of the top hitters for ECU and the first baseman this year. Also, 2 signed copies of this new book, and also my book, Coaching Third, about legendary ECU coach Keith LeClaire, and a signed Parker Bird trading card. Parker Bird is another amazing East Carolina baseball story. We'll get into it if we have a chance. Otherwise, you're going to have to read about him in the book. But there's some really great things in that package.
Yes, I was lucky enough to read this book, and it is jam-packed full of really good stories, and it's really, really good. If you're an ECU fan, it's a must buy. If you're a college baseball fan, it's a must buy. It makes you want to jump in your car and go to your nearest college baseball game and cheer people on. So I know you touched on it a bit in the introduction, but what really inspired you to write this book?
It was kind of funny. I'd had some conversations with friends, and like I said, I'm a fan. I sit in the jungle. I have season tickets in the jungle. And I was talking to a friend a couple of years ago, and she said, I think it's time for you to write another ECU baseball book. My first one was actually my first book in 2010. I've written a number of books since then, but they haven't been in my backyard at East Carolina. And I thought about that. And so what I decided to start kind of down the road of was I'm going to follow this team through the 2023 season last year and see where that leads us. If it had led to Omaha, then that might have been a different type of book, kind of an inside look at one season. And I did get media credentials, so I was up in the press box for the first part of the season. And then I thought, I don't really want to sit up here. I like to sit in the jungle. And so started really hanging out more with fans. Some people I knew, some I didn't at the time, but just interviewing the faithful and realizing how many incredible stories exist around the community and their interaction with the players and vice versa, and their impact on one another. And I thought, certainly if they'd made Omaha again, it might have been a different book. But when that didn't happen, I knew I had a book, and I think I enjoyed it more than that other book because it's just so unique and it was so much fun. I interviewed the janitor from the ECU baseball offices and some of the most legendary former players and parents of players. And like I said, fans and children. And it just ended up being such a rich collection of stories and such a variety that I never could have captured any other way.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's jam packed full of a bunch. Like, you got a wide breadth of different stories. You've got tragic stories, you've got inspiring stories, you've got funny stories, and my favorite one, I don't want to touch too much on him, was the Monmouth megaphone story.
That's my favorite one too.
And I literally laughed out loud during that whole passage, especially when they make an appearance at a visiting ballpark. without ECU being involved at all. I was just laughing. I had to share that with one of my friends. I took a screenshot of that story. I was like, just read this. And he was howling with laughter too. So
it's a great story. I read it out loud to my husband right after I wrote it, and I never do that. I'm taking my computer upstairs and going, I have to read this to you. So
it's so unusual, the interactions, because unlike with like pro sports, you see it a little bit with pro sports. If you're particularly loud, sometimes you get a reaction from a fielder, but for the most part, there's no interaction between the fans and the players at the pro level. And with the college level, even when you're selling out at ECU, you're still very much involved. And that's what a lot of these stories are about with the opposing players. And that's part of my favorite part of the story is all the interactions with the opposing players, from, the heckling and exchanging food and signing the K board. If you can get them to sign the K board, I thought that was.
If the center fielder strikes out, they're supposed to sign their own K.
Yes.
And it's actually considered an honor. It sounds like it would be a slight, but it isn't. I have a quick story that isn't in the book because it happened Wednesday.
Oh.
So I was out there Wednesday when they were playing ODU, and they were interacting with the left fielder in a way that was really good natured. If a left fielder wants to chat and wants to get to know the fans, they're going to have the best time. If they act like a statue and don't turn and don't answer, it's not going to be very fun for them. So that's a PSA from me to any opposing outfielders who might come to Clarkville Player. So this left fielder was having a great time. And there was a guy, a fan, who I guess had come from ODU. I don't even know. And he said, hey, I know his mom. She's a friend of mine. I'm going to FaceTime her so she can see what's happening. And the Jungle fan said, what's her name? And they said, Caroline. And I can't remember the player's name, but somebody could figure it out. So he calls up, FaceTimes the mom, and our fans start singing Sweet Caroline to her, to the mother of the left fielder, as she watches all this that's going on with her son. I mean, it's just really, you have to love that. It really is so neat to see when the opposing left fielders and center and right fielders often too say that was one of the best experiences I ever had. Even if they lost, even if they didn't have a great game, they just got swept up in the spirit of the place.
And that's what's nice. It sounds like it's for the most part wholesome, but also it can get creative if you need it to, rattle somebody, but it's not necessarily crossing any boundaries. And it's mentioned in the book, there's some self-policing that occurs if it does try to push that boundary.
Family friendly.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes right field, not as much, because that's where the students hang out. So word of warning.
That doesn't surprise me. That's where I was like, students are hard to control, especially if they've gotten a little bit of drinks in them. So you touched on it on the prize package. I wanted to ask your opinion, because when you wrote about it, I don't think you gave necessarily your opinion on them. We call them at College Baseball Central, we call them the Grimace jerseys. From McDonald's. Do you like them?
I love them.
You love them?
I think to be broadly stereotypical, I think women and guys under 25 think they're awesome.
Yeah.
And the rest of the populace, maybe not so much. I think they're great.
So it's funny, when they came out, I was like, ugh. And then like another time I was like, oh, they look pretty good. And then another time, like, I can't figure it out. It depends on what day or maybe what mood I'm in, whether I like the Grimace jerseys or not, the purple.
Powder purple. Yeah, you could say purple. Lavender, but they don't. My favorite part about that, and I talk about it in the book, I interviewed Blake Hardigree, who's the director of baseball ops, and he had never been to Greenville before he took the job. He'd been down in Texas and Oklahoma, so he didn't really know what he was walking into. And he said he was just flummoxed when those uniforms were released. And it wasn't just that people didn't like them, whatever, but the opinions and the degree and the volume of opinions, because who really pays that much attention to your average college baseball team's New Jerseys? Well, no, this inspired so much, passion on either side. And he thought, ooh, this is something, this is something different.
Oh yeah, and it's really funny, especially on something like on X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it now. Because those people find each other and they can they turn the tide, and it gets louder and louder. So, one of the things I noticed in Charlottesville, we talked before the show. We were both at the Charlottesville Regional. Ultimately, ECU fell. At that point, but one thing I notice is and you touch on it towards the end of the book a little bit on a certain player. I saw the love that that team and the fans had for Lane Hoover.
Oh yeah.
It was just unbelievable. Like, I know that they're gonna love a lot of players that's covered in your books, but there's something special, it seemed like, for Lane Hoover. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, he's just an amazing young man, for one thing, and just kind of embodied the spirit of the place and the team. Not super big, didn't come in super highly touted, and just worked his tail off to become this, really important player from a baseball perspective and also from a leadership perspective. He also suffered 2 major injuries throughout his career. One was a facial fracture that was horrible. And the story in the book of a local fan who took him into his house and fed him applesauce when he got his jaw wired shut. And, that really captures, again, what we're talking about. But he just, he really persevered through all kinds of hardships and through COVID, like so many other college players did. And, just amazing to get to watch his senior year. And I got to talk to his parents, and they both teared up just talking about this place and what it meant to their son. And I've had my 4th child is in college. I've had 3 go through, so I know what it's like as a parent to see a community or other adults in a community embrace your child when they're away from home. There's nothing like that. So it was neat to talk to a few parents.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about college baseball in general, is it seems so tight knit. Even, not just the communities, the fan bases, but like even just like the press box is surprisingly, small, and everyone's so nice to each other, even though you may be competing. I always think that it's just the coolest thing that everyone is, it's tight knit, which is really nice. Now, you only really talk about some of your favorite moments, I think, in the intro or anything, but so, for the most part, you're kind of delivering, as a sports writer, as you should. But I'm curious, what's your favorite moment, on-field moment for East Carolina baseball?
I was thinking about this. I thought you might ask me. So I'm going to cheat a little. The first amazing moment, so it always sticks with me, for me and my family, was 2009 regional, the final game where ECU beat South Carolina. And it was just this amazing comeback in the 9th and in extra innings. And, just one of those kind of unbelievable. If you say Devin Harris, anybody who remembers that moment will go, oh yeah. And I was working on my other ECU baseball book at the time, but I'd had a lot of small children in the, years before that, and hadn't been able to be out that often. And I thought, this is something special, and I want to be out here whenever I can. Since then, I would say a couple of the regional wins have been particularly amazing. 2022, and kind of the dawning knowledge that ECU might actually host a Super Bowl in Clark LeClaire, which did happen, didn't end the way they wanted it to, but winning that regional was unbelievable. And then I'd say this year, the 3rd game against North Carolina, because the ECU series against North Carolina was home, neutral, or away, neutral, and home. And the home game on Sunday, they won it. A freshman hit a walk-off to win it in the bottom of the 9th. I mean, it was just kind of Bristol Carter. It just had everything. And I thought this was, amazing. And for it to be in February and to have that level of emotion and excitement in that stadium, it was something else.
That was a fantastic series. And I got in a little bit of trouble that morning. Saturday morning, we do a game day type show. Mm-hmm. And after Trey Savage hadn't won for ECU on Friday night, right. North Carolina had pulled out a narrow victory. I was like, there's no way ECU can win this series. I think North Carolina's going to take care of business. And I ate crow because, as we know, ECU won the next 2, the neutral and at North Carolina. It was very nice to have that series in February, because I think it's the 2nd week of the year, and not a whole lot of close competitive teams that, you can anticipate and look forward to. And it was a really, really cool atmosphere. It was cold.
It was amazing and cold. But yeah, I didn't remember it being cold because it was just such an exciting atmosphere. Yeah. That was a great one. So there are some amazing moments. It's a fun thing to think about.
Absolutely. Okay, so favorite tradition then. So we've got, the K-boards, the megaphone, the cannon, the brooms, the jungle jumps. What's your favorite tradition at ECU?
I love the jungle jumps, especially when a player who's never been called for one before, like a freshman who's had his first home run or his first big pitching outing, gets called, because the fans call them out. They call 4 or 5 players out for the jump every game, every win. I love that, but I think maybe my favorite is when the jungle fans give a care package to an opposing player who they've gotten attached to over the course of the weekend. sometimes they'll pack up a little box with snacks and their name on the top. And just to see those players think, are you kidding me? For them to give a gift, that's a really neat thing.
That is really cool. And yeah, the jungle jumps, I was surprised to see that basically the first person who was doing the jungle jumps was Eric Backett, who is now the head coach at Clemson. And I'm a huge fan of his. That's somebody I want to run through a wall for whenever we interview him during press conferences. So I completely had forgotten that he went to East Carolina. And then it's kind of just funny that he's one of the first ones that was known for doing the jungle jumps as a left fielder.
He's an amazing coach, an amazing person. And, he and Cliff Godwin, the current ECU coach, both played for Keith LeClaire, who was the subject of my first book, and also Nick Schnabel, who's an assistant under Eric at Clemson, Chad Tracy, who had quite a long MLB career. It's the coaching tree and the number of baseball accomplishments that have come out of just a few years of ECU baseball when Coach LeClaire first got here is something extraordinary.
It is rather impressive. So we've talked about the book, but now I want to talk a little bit about this 2024 team. They're 27-8. We've got them ranked number 11 in the country. I think D1 Baseball has them as high as 9.
Mm-hmm. 10 today. Baseball America might have been 10. I think.
They've been fantastic. The pitching with Yasavage and Zach Root.
Wyatt Lunsford Shankman has the best ERA in the country.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And so is this the year? Is this going to be the year?
I'm afraid to speak to this because I'm not going to jinx anything. Right. I'll say that I think they have what they need. If things are hitting on all cylinders, that this team has what it needs offensively, pitching wise. I mean, that elusive pitching depth and bullpen strength, I think, has continued to be more encouraging as the season's gone on. I felt pretty good about our starting rotation all along, but goodness, the bullpen's showing up lately. Defensively, I think there's been a little more sloppiness than Cliff Godwin would like to see. So you got to plug some of those holes. And again, that's sort of day to day. Some days it just feels like weird, things happen out there in the field. But yes, I think they have all of the tools to make it happen this year. And they can do it. I mean, they can compete, as we talked about in regards to that North Carolina series. They can compete at the highest level.
Yeah, and I really like them in a super regional if they get past the regional with that pitching staff, because it's going to be really hard to take 2 of 3 from that pitching staff at a super regional thing. So it's just you got to get through that regional hump where something weird is possible to happen. Hopefully it doesn't, but I do like them in a super regional with the pitching staff they've got put together. So fingers crossed that this is the year. They're one of the best teams that has not been to Omaha, if not the best team that has not been to Omaha. So I know there's a lot of people out there that would love to see the Jungle come to Omaha, because we know that they will travel.
Yes, they will travel. And what is the contest? The shots? The Jello shot?
Oh, yeah. They will take that personally.
Yeah, that'll be something to watch. I'm just going to go ahead and warn anybody if that happens. It'll be awesome.
So that's great. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I'm going to hold up the book. I didn't do that yet, but there's.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
it didn't have a pretty cover. It was a advanced reader copy.
Yep. So never take this for granted. It's coming out Friday. Thank you so much for joining me. I hopefully will have you on again when we do this off-season book club potentially.
Book club. We're getting sports fans of the world to be more literary than they previously were. My goal is to write books for guys who don't read books, because a lot of times at book signings, people have come up and said, "That's the first book my husband ever read." So I can't relate to that because I read a lot. So that's why I volunteered to do this. I was like, I'm in. So, all right. So thank you. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.